welcome back everybody to another episode of DigiTalk Architects. Today we have with us Mike Venn from King's Crowd. Mike, thank you for coming on the show. Please tell us about your experience and what you're doing right now, and let's get rolling.
Thanks, Caroline. It's great to be a guest on your show. So I think I want to go back to, I'm currently in Virginia, but I started in Seattle probably in 2009 or 10, kind of when Seattle was just starting to become a real ecosystem for tech startups. And the way that I got involved is I participated in an event called Startup Weekend. And at that point, I knew nothing about the tech, the high tech startup world. I didn't know what an MVP was or go to market or CAC, LTV, all these, phrases they throw around. I just knew that there was a lot of energy I went to this conference on entrepreneurship. And at the end of it, they had the Startup Weekend. Startup Weekend
Right.
it's a 2-day event where about 150 people show up. They give you pizza on Friday night, you mingle, and then anybody can pitch an idea for 60 seconds. And I didn't have any ideas to pitch, so I just sat in the audience. And the idea was once people pitched their ideas, and you'd walk around the room and choose the founder or the pitcher that you wanted to join, and then you'd build a company literally over the weekend. You'd build a prototype,
Interesting.
an MVP, you would establish product market fit, build a slide deck. It was very interesting. And by Sunday night, when they did the demo night, I think we started with about 12 companies and maybe 8 of them survived the weekend. And these were very
Oh, wow.
impressive. Yeah, these were very impressive, pitches. And I left that event thinking I want to get involved. I don't know where to start. And so I was at that event. There was a mentor, Dave Parker, who's a very renowned startup founder and a consultant. He's written a great book on startup land. And he asked me to come help him build Founder Institute, which is a incubator. It's now all around the
Okay.
world. Adeo Resi really and his team have really crushed it. They've got hundreds of locations, raised billions of dollars, have daylighted a lot of founders that probably would never have seen the light of day and even know where to start. So I had a really good foundation in the startup world, and I got to meet a lot of very experienced, successful CEOs who became mentors of this, in our incubator program. So I met probably 30 or 40, some of the most successful CEOs in Seattle, startup CEOs. And I went on to work with one of them, a gentleman named John Lauer, who started ZipWeb. And he asked me to come join the team early on before they even had before product market fit was even established. So I joined about a month before they launched. And I remember the first, by the way, ZipWhip went on to become acquired by Twilio for about $1 billion. So I think it was a pretty big unicorn story in Seattle. But in the early days, no one knew what we were selling, which was landline texting. In fact, there wasn't even any precedence for it. It was just an idea that people were like, I don't even know if that's possible. I would literally be making demos on how we could activate a business landline or toll-free number. And people would say that's impossible. And I just sent them a text message to their landline number from their mobile phone. They were saying, this is impossible. You're making things up here. It's like, no, we're not. And so I learned, I got a lot of great first experiences, 0 to 1. I made the first sale. I hired the first salesperson, helped scale the sales team. And I went on to become an entrepreneur in residence, which is kind of a fancy way of saying I looked for opportunities for enterprise deals for the company to accelerate revenue. So following the ZipWhip journey, I went on to work for a couple other companies, learned a ton. And then, in between, I took a couple of years off just to take a break because my family had moved from the West to the East Coast. And during that time, I was introduced to the CEO of King's Crowd, Chris Lustrino. And what I really respected about King's Crowd and what Chris was trying to do was he was giving investors tools to be successful. Everyone else that I'd worked with in the past had been focused on the founder. King's Crowd focused
Hmm.
on the retail investor and the accredited investor, but
Okay.
mostly people who aren't accredited according to the SEC, right? The
Hmm.
SEC created this barrier of entry called accredited investor, which means you have to make 200,000 in salary or have $1 million of net worth, and that eliminated about 90 to 95% of the audience out there. And so the Jobs Act changed
Right.
all that. King's Crowd got in
Yeah.
early, started collecting all the data for every Reg CF raise going back to 2016. And now, King's Crowd has aggregated over 10,000 raises, created these really instrumental data points. And we're kind of like the one source of truth. We're like the Switzerland of Europe. We're that objective, center where everyone comes to and says, hey, what's going on? So I got involved. I oversee biz dev, and it's, I'm new. I've only been there about 18 months, but I've learned a ton. And Brian Belay is our CTO, and he is really he's an original gangster. He's invested in over 200 companies, so he brings a ton of experience to how King's Crowd designs the product, the dashboard, so investors
Right.
can really have a delightful experience. And so that's kind of a little bit of my background. I've also invested in about 30 startups through Founder Institute, through my private investments, and then through MVP Studio.
Very good. All right. So, I mean, you just mentioned King's Crowd tracks thousands of startups and data points and, a lot of information. So, as someone who's, part of that process and you see the data and all of that, what are some early AI and market signals that you see in startups that tend to predict success, especially those that founders often ignore or undervalue?
Well, believe it or not, I mean, this isn't rocket science. It's the number one market signal is revenue. Now, let me break that down because I don't just mean blanket statement revenue, a credit card swiped or someone cuts a check. By revenue, if we double click on that, you can include meaningful engagement metrics that could easily lead to a subscription or some sort of purchase. We can include patents, getting deeper into the rabbit hole of a patent actually being ready to be FDA approved. Anything that is meaningful metrics is really the key. And having mentored and been involved in hundreds of startups at the incubator and accelerator level, where I've actually met the founder and either interviewed them or mentored them, it is mind blowing how there's this hallucinatory capacity that a founder has where they can pitch their company without any meaningful metrics. So for me as an investor and as someone that is in the Reg CF space, I think it's really critical that if a founder, an issuer is going to try to raise online capital, that they don't attempt to do this unless they have very meaningful metrics.
Okay.
And because there's this idea that if you build it, they will come. That's the biggest deception out there. That may work. That may work for just a few companies that have really hit product market jackpot. But it's there's this idea of
It's
crossing the
rare.
chasm. It's very rare. Yeah, crossing the chasm. A lot of people out there may have heard of that book by Jeffrey Moore, who stole it from Everett Rogers, Diffusion of Innovation. And the idea of crossing the chasm is, to get to the chasm, you have to get momentum enough to cross it to get to the mainstream market, right? The early and late stage marketplace. And so momentum really is all about meaningful metrics, and that's revenue, engagement, whether that is social media or subscriptions that could be freemiums, but could be an easy lift to get to a paid, and then patents. For instance, Pandora. I've been listening to Pandora for years. I pay, I think, $5 a month. And I just now, as I listen, now they're charging me. I'm paying $5 a month, and they're charging me to eliminate ads. So the first 10 years of Pandora, there was no ads, $5 a month, love it. Now I'm going to cancel. So my point is that if Pandora would have came out with, hey, you pay us and you're going to get ads, no way. So you have to be very incremental in getting your market signal. You have to pay your dues. And I do want to highlight something about that, is that having been involved with most of the startups that I came on board as a card carrying member, I watched how the CEOs would engage with the support, the help, the helpline, support line. You think, oh, the CEO is too important for that. But no way. When you're a small company, 5 or 3, 5, 7, 10 employees, the CEO ought to have their finger on the pulse of that critical frontline engagement with the customer, which is support and help, because it's such a valuable feedback signal. So
Yes.
CEOs really have to pay their dues. I've never been a CEO founder, so I can't speak
Oh, I
authentically
can
about.
speak on. Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
We do. We're the face and the direct line, and sometimes we wear many hats.
Hmm.
All right. So just to clarify, help us a little bit, the listeners and the viewers understand what Reg CF is, just because many people might not be familiar with the terminology in the venture funding, crowdfunding business.
Yeah, great question. Well, so Reg CF was it came out of a the Jobs Act that I think was passed in 2012 or 13 under the Obama administration, and there were a lot of really key people, original gangsters out there, attorneys, Sherman, Devin, who they worked for years getting that legislation passed, and when it passed, it didn't hit the ground running. It took probably 4 or 5 years to even get to a point where I think in 2016 may have been the first campaign. However, in 2021, Reg CF, which stands for regulated crowdfunding, or you could say investment crowdfunding, which means that a retail investor, someone who's non-accredited, can now own shares. They can own equity in a startup at any stage, but most of these startups are at the early stage. So Reg CF is regulated crowdfunding, and you can issuer or a startup can issue equity raising up to $5 million.
Okay.
So it's a very substantial piece of the puzzle for a capital stack strategy for a
Right.
founder, right? Reg D is the classic. You go into angels, and Reg D is also a part of crowdfunding because there's a part of it that allows you to go to the crowd without advertise without knowing them. I won't get into that, but Reg CF. Let me put it this way: King's Crowd puts out some very meaningful data. One of your questions below, I kind of cheated. I went down below. You said, what's some good data, market trends for startups to know? King's Crowd has a
Hmm.
end of year data trends for all of Reg CF, and you can go to King's Crowd and download a free report. So in 2024, there was about 1,500 campaigns. Probably, I don't know, 60 of those were Reg A, I think. The average Reg CF campaign raised, I think, 330,000. However,
That's pretty good.
the median was about 110,000. So now we're getting in that area of, half of them raised less than 110,000, right? And
Right.
about 20% of them didn't even hit their minimum, which is that's pretty, to me, a very significant, that's a concerning failure rate because that means they
Do,
didn't
do
even
you
raise
s-
5 or 10,000.
so let me ask you a question about that. Do you see a trend on the companies that have not reached their funding goal?
Great question. I'm going to write that down because I want to put a pin in that. So before we go into a trend of startups that don't reach their minimum or, let's say below 100,000, let me say that the data founders can go to King's Crowd and they have a free tool called Evaluation Startup Report where they can
Okay.
answer a couple questions, takes like 2 minutes, hit a button, and that report will give a founder an objective overview of companies similar to theirs, somewhat similar, what they have raised in the past, how much they raised,
Hmm.
what's their industry category. So
Right.
that is very meaningful data because two things that a founder has to get right before they raise online capital is what's their valuation, right? What do they
Hmm.
think, their company's worth? And what is their target raise, how much they want to raise? If a founder
Okay.
says, well, I can raise 5 million, so I'm going to raise 5 million. No,
Doesn't
maybe,
work that way.
yeah, maybe a dozen companies have raised 5 million. And these are like, some of these are rock star Series B companies that just use Reg CF as like a little kicker. But to raise up to 5 million, you just got to have a ton of following. You have to have a very established product market fit. And
Of
I'm going to
course.
give you, if for those listening, one of the most meaningful statistics. I think Kickstarter came out with this, or Indiegogo came out with it. And by the way, Kickstarter and Indiegogo, they're not um, Reg CF platforms. They're rewards based. When I say Reg CF, I don't mean Kickstarter, Indiegogo. Those are rewards based. You get a T-shirt, you get a a case of soda or whatever the
Yeah,
swag
some
is.
sort of incentive. Yeah.
Incentive, yeah, whole different planet. Reg CF is you're
Okay.
selling shares. This is SEC regulated. You have to file a Form C. You have to hire.
You're actually investing in the company.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is probably one of the most meaningful signals is that before you launch a Reg CF campaign, it's highly advised that you have at least 20% of the amount secured. And what I mean by secured is that you have an audience that is either indicated, hey, we're behind your company. Once you go live, we'll invest, or you do something called testing the waters. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the platforms out there will allow you to test the waters, which means you can stand up a campaign page, which is basically that, that scrolling page you see when you go to a platform and you see, what they're raising. You can test the waters with one of those where people can say, hey, I'm going to make a verbal commitment. I can still back out of it, but I'm going to say, yeah, I'd put in, $100 or $1,000. So again, one of the most meaningful signals is that before launching a campaign, you want to know that you have at least 20% of that target raise in your back pocket before you hit the go button. And the reason why is because in most campaigns, 40 to 50% of the money is raised within the first several weeks, right?
Right.
So let's say that
Yeah.
you hit the go button and you just sit there and watch. Like I was watching one of your
And nothing
Instagram.
happened.
Yeah, that Instagram post where you said they spent $200 and they got 15 views. They're all excited, right?
Yeah.
Um, so if you hit the go button,
Hey,
you get
that's
crickets.
true, right? It has happened.
Oh yeah, it's real. It's all too real.
Yeah,
So
it's real.
again, to me, those statistics of 20% don't reach their minimum, 50% raise less than 100,000, that has to change. And what's changing it is that there's professionals coming into the space, Atlas Group, Capital Department, niche, digital niche. These are all companies like you that will help a founder build the foundation, right? The before,
Right.
during, and after. The before the event, before you hit launch, the during, and then the after. They're all valuable phases. They're all instrumental. The before is where you say, I'm going to build my audience. I'm going to test the waters. I'm going to put the word out there. And I'm going to make sure that when I hit the go button, I've got an audience that's going to get me to about 20% of the raise. So if I'm going to raise $1 million, I want to have kind of, a good sense that I've already got 200,000 in the bag. And so back to
Yeah.
your question, Carolina, you asked me, what were some of the signals of those that fail? That's the main one. Is they think that I'll build it and they'll come. I've got a great company. Reg CF is easy, it's light, slow hanging fruit. Angels are finicky. VCs are too ridiculous. I'm going to go to Reg CF. No, everyone has a place in the capital stack. Reg CF is an incredibly complex thing to do on your own.
All right. So you mentioned, you know, startups need to kind of get ready for crowdfunding, Reg CF. So, I'm in the marketing space. So tell me, in your opinion, where should their marketing strategy shift should be? What channels, messaging, audience, building tactics that are most effective to attract customers and inspire investors' confidence to then go and do the crowdfunding and all this stuff.
Perfect. Okay, so probably again, we it's in school. I remember a teacher saying, Mike, if you come to class and you don't do anything, you're going to forget everything I say. If you take notes, you'll remember 2 or 3%. If you study, you'll remember 10%. He goes, if you memorize, you'll remember 100%. I go, okay, I get it. I get the point. So
Shorter.
this is what I want for the listening audience. I want you to take this away. One of the most important things when it comes to a Reg CF campaign is to invest in that before stage. So you have the before, during, and after, right? Before is before
Mm-hmm.
you hit the go button on raise. And in that before phase, you also want to line up your updates. What's an update? So an update is that once you go live, you want to connect with your audience at least once a week, if not more, and say, hey, we just got an LOI, a letter of intent, or hey, we just hit 10,000 subscribers for our freemium. Hey, our customer acquisition costs just dropped from $300 to $85. Now we can crush it, blah, blah, blah. An update is something meaningful that an investor is going to look at and say, wow, this startup is really on the ball. they're getting it done. So that's the key thing, is preparing updates. And Carolina, Digital Architects or any marketing agency, they can greatly assist a startup, because most early stage startups don't have a marketing team. So you guys become a fractional marketing agency. So you could help them tee up 10 to 20 updates, so that when they hit the go button, they're not scrambling to think, what are we going to make? What are we going to make up? They've got it in the bag, and they can.
Yeah, that's part of your strategy, right? So in our experience, when we're working with startups or, in the early stages, usually it's like, let's build your strategy, right? As a fractional CMO, and obviously, with the agency, we do kind of like what you're saying, right? We are, in effect, the fractional marketing team for most of these companies, because you know not all of those companies need a full marketing team, right? But we support them in, with experts in different fields of that marketing strategy, right? But I agree, right? Like, going in and building the strategy before, it's so important, so that when you go full on, then you already know what steps you're following, and what your action plan is going into your crowdfunding or whatever it is you're doing, right?
Correct. Let me highlight another one, and let me preface it with, I highly recommend, if you haven't read this book, it's called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. The Power of
Oh,
Habit.
it's an amazing book.
Good. Yeah.
I've
So
I've
you may
read it.
remember. Okay, Carolina, do you remember where he talks about, I think it's called low density affiliation, which is, to get a social movement, you have to have some sort of affiliation with the
Mm-hmm.
audience. So that
Yep.
applies to marketing. It applies to Reg CF. Whatever industry category you're in, biotech, ed tech, fintech, consumer product goods, CPG, whatever industry category, there is an audience out there that has an affiliation to what you're doing. And because you're a person, obviously a founder, you have a story that typically connects to why you started the company. That's, to solve a
Yeah.
great problem or an inspiration. So when it comes to going after channels, it's really important that you identify your, what we call your ICP, your ideal
I
customer
do.
persona. And if I could break that down and run it through the Reg CF filter, let's look at, what is your ideal customer audience, your ICA. And it's those that would have an affiliation with what you're doing. Okay. Now I'm going to give you a real
Mm-hmm.
simple example. It's one thing for me to say it, it's another to put shoes on it. But let's say that a founder has a dental device, right? Something that's going to
Mm-hmm.
disrupt the dental industry. Why wouldn't they go to a dental association, or maybe a
Right.
consultant who works with dentists? It's such a low hanging fruit. It's such a low barrier of entry to
Right.
capture that market. So that's really key, is with your channels, is don't just take a shotgun approach or try to boil the ocean. Get very specific. On marketing, we say TAM, SAM, SOM. TAM, total addressable market, TOM, observable market, then serviceable. By
Yep.
serviceable, we mean there's an affiliation, there's some sort of connection there. So you be very specific about your channels. Don't give in to just a shotgun approach. Also, just let me see. I would say that it's for marketing strategy. I would say hire a professional, even if you can only afford 1,000 a month. Find a marketing company or someone that can help you, because again, there's a skill. Obviously, there's a skill to marketing and business development. And going back to your earlier question, Carolina, that what are the signals of those who fail? I think inevitably, the startup does it. They do everything themselves, and they don't take the time. And ideally, it's work with someone that has some experience in Reg CF, or at least has wrapped their head around it and understands the dynamic of the before, during, and after. Because let's say you crush it in the before and you get to 20, 30% of your raise, then you shift to a during strategy. And then afterwards, the most meaningful is the after. Because if you picked up another 3, 4, 500 investors, and let's say the average investor put in $1,000, it's how you engage with that audience afterwards that's going to lead to your seed round, your A round. It's very common for someone that starts with $1,000. They're saying, I'm just going to see what they do with this. And then they look at
Mm-hmm.
you like, for me, I've invested in a lot of companies. I've never heard any updates. So I think, God, I'm not a meaningful investor to them. So why would I invest again when they come back and say, hey, we're doing this again? So those are some ideas on marketing strategy.
Quick question. You said, let's play numbers. You said you've invested in quite a few, right? So of all the things you just mentioned, what is, let's put it in percentages. How many companies are doing the right things, the updates, and how many are not in your experience?
Well,
Give it a rough number. A rough
okay,
number.
so I think there's 32 companies, maybe 5.
Updates, like good
Yeah, so
regular
so
updates, and then the rest
15%.
are. And then
Nothing.
from the rest, you've never heard again,
Right.
or
Yeah. Yep.
yeah,
Yep. And one of the investments I made was an index, so it was kind of a basket, but still,
mhm.
you know, one of the things that really impresses me is when a founder or CEO takes $1,000 investor and treats them the same way as a, let's say, 25 or $50,000. Now, I'm not saying the same way as like
Yeah,
a lead
reasonably
investor or a
speaking,
VC, but
yeah.
because you don't know, and that's something that is really and you can do it in such an easy way. I mean, all the marketing technology out there, it doesn't take anything to put together a marketing motion that let's say twice a month an email goes out that that puts in the fields, hey Carolina, this is Mike from MVP. I'm just reaching out to say here's an update. It doesn't take any extra time. It just takes
This is
care.
what's happening.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know one company that does it really well on Facebook. They're pretty big now, but they constantly pumping out like small updates, but they're regular, right? Like this is happening this week or whatever, and I think that's helped them a ton.
Yeah.
I want to jump into a topic that it's unavoidable these days. Let's go on AI and how it plays into your field. So, how is AI and all the advancements in analytics being used or could be used to help startup founders make better decisions, whether around product, market fit, burn rate management, customer acquisition, forecasting? How are you guys seeing it from your perspective and what you experience day to day? And how is that changing their approach?
Sure. Well, I'm probably the worst person on the Kingscrow team to ask that. 'Cause I'm the least AI savvy, but I will say, as I listen in on team calls, our engineering team, our head of content, just all the departments, they are analysts. They are using AI very effectively. It's part of our proprietary algorithm. So for Kingscrow, it's been
Right.
very beneficial because we deal with data.
Mm-hmm.
However, when it comes to marketing, I think it's a shaky bridge to walk because I believe there's a learning curve to AI to really use it well and not just think, hey, this is going to save me 5 hours a week. I think that at this stage, if a founder is looking to raise significant online capital, they should be aware of AI. And if they have the time, they should just keep studying it, put in a couple hours a week watching YouTubes or whatever, do a Udemy course. But I would really say that marketing, there's so much marketing technology, pre AI that's out there that works
Oh,
great.
yes.
There's literally thousands of companies, so I would say I would, be very, uh, you know, uh,
Wary,
reserved, wary of
reserve.
leaning into AI to cover a major thing that could impact your campaign.
Okay. Yeah, I guess, I mean, that makes sense. You know what? Coming from the marketing side, every day there is a new tool, and you do have to be very careful on how you're using the tools and the technology. It is greatly beneficial, but it does come with caution,
It
and
does.
and in making sure that it doesn't become too generic and not authentic enough,
Yeah.
for your own company. So yeah, I can see that.
Let me say one thing on that. So,
Yeah.
whatever AI can, like, chat GPT, whatever AI can help you instantly and you're already familiar with it, of course, use it. But like when it comes to building your raise page, which is really a key pillar of your campaign, your raise page is that it's that commercial that they're going to see. It includes your video, it includes your deck, includes, the
Mm-hmm.
problem, solution, challenges, how you're going to, win the market. That's all on your raise page. And
Mm-hmm.
how you build that is really, it's critical, because
Unique. Pretty.
that's your commercial, and it has to be unique. You definitely want to make sure your DNA as a founder is in there. It's not something you want to hand over to AI or whatever. So
Yes. Yeah, I agree. That one in particular definitely has to be pretty unique in your. I like to say it, like, if I was doing it, which, to be transparent, I'm kind of doing it as a side project. You can't just go and say, the chat GPT, let's call it a standard, can answer, right? Like, your why has to be in there, right? The why are you
yes,
doing it? How
yes,
did you get inspired to do what you're doing, right? And that has to be in there with your message, right? So yeah. All right. Um and I mean, we keep talking AI tools, startups. So I mean, as a startup, marketing budget is pretty lean. It's very limited, right? And a lot of them don't even have one, have never talked about having a marketing budget. And so, again, a lot of them rely on marketing, AI tools, and so on. So, in your experience and what you see on your day to day, what AI or marketing tools have you seen deliver a high return on investment? Um, and I guess, to complement that, what warning signs should founders watch out when adopting these tools, aside from what we just talked about, so they're not wasting time, money, or diluting their brands?
sure. So, one of the metrics that comes to mind in the marketing agency world is ROAS, return on ad spend.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of companies out there that they have worked out a system, a strategy where if a founder says, "Hey, here's, I can put in $10,000," and they could get back $20,000 of, of raise. So they put in 10,000 and they raised 20,000. Now, some may say, well, that's that's pretty egregious that you spend 10,000 and you raise 20,000, so you only keep 50% of what you raise. However, that's not the only return you get. You get, like if you think of the funnel, that 10,000 are those that committed, but then you have 10, 50, 100x people that saw your ad and maybe will come back later. So be mindful of how to spend, like when it comes to a Reg CF campaign, a return on ad spend, be mindful of what that really means. Don't throw everything, don't throw it all out at once, be incremental, in how you work with a marketing professional. As far as, let me talk a little bit about sales intel, which to me, that means like when you have a contact, is it like, let's say you work with a company like, I think Rocket Reach or Zoom Info, these companies where you can sign up for 20, 30, $50 a month and you can get a prospect's email and phone number, or LinkedIn profile. So there's four things that I think about for a sales intel, which is it accurate? Is it addressable? Do I have their name and their title so I can address them personally? Is it affordable? Uh, is it let's see, actionable, accurate, accessible, addressable? Um, yeah, I think so. Those are, I can't quite get them all arranged in my mind, but when you purchase sales data and you're using it, it's really important to be consistent and to like I get probably 5-10 LinkedIn requests a week to invest or whatever, and I can easily tell, even at this stage where AI has been out there a long time and everyone's doing it, it's so easy to tell who used AI and whether this is they paid a company to use their LinkedIn handle to send out messages, and I just ignore all those. And so when, if you're, what's really great about a Reg CF campaign is it gives you a chance to really work on, polish up your investor relations, strategies and, build a foundation for the long game. Okay. So I would say use the money wisely to build a following. And then, when it comes to some of the basic ideas, be consistent, be creative, be authentic. I'm not an expert in that space, but so maybe that's how I would summarize is be incremental in how you use your marketing dollar, and definitely keep your hand on the steering wheel. Even if you hire a marketing agency, be involved in every step of the way so that if you have to move on, you understand exactly what that organization brought and what they did.
Yeah. When I'm talking to my prospects, right? Some of the things that come up often, right, is they said, the ex company I was working with did not give us constant updates, or so that ties to what you're saying, in the sense of you need to partner with a marketing team, or anybody, honestly, that you partner with. They need to be committed to those updates as well, right? So when I'm talking to companies and I heard that, I'm like, well, let me give you our process. Right from the get-go, you're going to get a weekly meeting where, and I do it for two reasons, right? I want to stay in touch with them, but I also want to be able to have the visibility to their business, so that I can then take that and make adjustments on the go, right? Because let's be honest, marketing and business, they don't stay static. They are constantly changing. So, how could I make a marketing plan or build a marketing strategy and expect that to be true 100% 3, 6 months, 12 months down the road? No, the reality is it doesn't happen that way. Marketing and business are changing day to day. So yes, I build this strategy today, but that strategy will need to be tweaked, regularly to adjust for market changes, business changes, whatever it is. So how are you expecting to do that if you're not meeting with your partners regularly? And in marketing is a pretty big partner to any business, right? Because that is what's giving your brand visibility, your business visibility, almost all of your customer or prospect interactions are coming from some sort of marketing, right, effort. So you need to have the visibility, but your marketing partners and teams need to have visibility into what you're doing, and your plans are to adjust, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And that really aligns with a lot of startup experts, VCs, like these mentors out there that have been in the game a long time. They will say that at some point in the life cycle of your company, and this is pretty early on in the life cycle, once you hit product market fit and you've demonstrated revenue, you've demonstrated a value proposition, your company becomes a marketing company. And primarily is how you capture the data and then how you learn, right? And experiment. That's 90% of it. So to really wrap your head around that, and what's great about a investment crowdfunding campaign or a Reg CF campaign is that you have so much interaction with the audience who are investors. They may be customers who become investors, which is one of the great benefits of Reg CF, is that customers become investors and they go on to become ambassadors, because there's no one more important than an investor spreading the gospel of your company. So that's how I would wrap up our interview, Carolina, is that, marketing and Reg CF are intertwined at the hip, and don't walk alone. Don't go it alone. If this is your first campaign, seek out expertise. Kingscrowd also has a company called Raise Papers, which makes the legal process and the accounting very easy. For about $3,500 or $4,000, they button that all up for you. So yeah, I would definitely check out Kingscrowd. I would check out a lot of the platforms out there, that are out there. I won't mention any names of them, but you know who they are. Just, and again, Kingscrowd will have a breakdown of all the ones out there, because we show like which ones are the top 10 and raises, and then we show you which ones specialize in industries and so forth. So And I'd say for, for digital architects, keep your antennas up for startups that come to you and say, hey, Carolina, we're thinking of raising online capital. Because I think what we talked about today is really timely. Reg CF is really, it's changing the game. It's really, it's exciting to see when you get retail investors, everyday people that start to invest in companies, especially local. That's a game changer.
Pretty good. Well, Mike, thank you so much for coming in to the show and sharing all your expertise with us. We hope to maybe have you again in the future and see where the crowdfunding market has evolved into and so on. To everybody, thanks for listening and watching us again. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Caroline. Have a great day.